Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Superficial Spirit. Our guest today is, wait for it, a mock, an, oh my God, oh my God. Our guest today is a model slash actor. I know, that sounds cringe, but Adam Fox actually does star in his own TV show called Sugar High. And although that may sound like a huge accomplishment in itself, based on the material that I was doing on my research for you, Adam, it sounds like your real dream is to meet a koala in real life. Is that right?
Um, where did you see that? I love koalas. They're my favorite animal. I don't know if that's
It was
uh
in your
oh,
bio.
it
It
was in the
was like
EPK.
Adam has done this and this and this and this,
Oh.
but what he really wants is to meet a koala in real life. And I was like, okay,
I think it
that's
was like
good.
that's like a semi-true thing that's also very digestible for any audience. So it's like quirky.
It's like the PG version of what you really really want.
Exactly, yeah. I mean, I do love koalas. I would love to meet one in real life, but I wouldn't say that's like my biggest dream.
I actually went to your Instagram before we hopped on because
Yeah.
for some reason when I read that, immediately in my mind was like, wait a second, I have 100% seen a picture of Adam with a koala, and
Hmm.
it took me down a little bit of a like a real koala, like holding it, and I was like, wait, maybe he has seen one. Anyway, it was a bit of a like mental like roller coaster that I was on getting on this call, but now we know it's not
I
your
have a
biggest dream, but it is on your list.
I have a stuffed koala. So maybe
Okay.
that's and maybe one day
Anyway,
they'll.
I'm
Oh,
glad that you're here.
me too.
If your fake koala comes to life,
Yeah.
then call me immediately and we'll
Okay.
definitely want to get that recorded.
Round two.
I'm
Yeah.
glad that you're on this show today. I'm just going to casually use my rose quartz roller because I'm obsessed with it. I am happy that you're on the show because your publicist, which shout out, you have a publicist, reached out to me in my last round of recordings, and we tried to schedule it, and it was right around the time I was moving back to Vancouver, so we couldn't quite get it on the books. But
Okay.
I was so excited for you, and I was reading through sort of the release and what you were working on. That you have this show on OutTV called Sugar High that's now in season two. It's
Sugar
just so
high.
exciting. Sugar High. What did I say?
Sugar highs, plural.
Oh,
But
Sugar Highs. That's because that.
I think it's a great
Uh,
show and I think it's a good title, but I think it's one of those ones that like it's hard to say out loud and have people retain because people always say sugar high or sugar baby or whatever, some version of it. It's rarely what it actually is.
yeah, maybe it's because I want to be on a sugar high right now. I like
Yeah.
when I first got it, I was curious about what it was, obviously, and I was just watching some of your press before, and it is about. I don't know if we want to call it like sugar baby culture or sugar daddy slash mommy culture, but it's about the that ecosystem of the exchange of like I guess money for love or money for time. Super interesting topic. In the interview that I watched of you, you said that it was something that you were really interested in before. I love this idea for a show. It's a very like I feel like it's part of queer culture for sure. It's also part of hetero culture. Like I know straight
Mhm.
girls who are sugar babies, um, and it's also your biggest like most high profile role yet. So tell me about like when you got the material and you were looking over it, were you like, oh God, like, do I really want the first one to be this sugar baby, sugar mama, sugar daddy material?
Mm.
Like, what were you thinking about it?
Well, I guess the first view of the material would have been the audition, and I feel like there was like a feeling when I got the audition, like, oh, like I know this world better than anybody else. Like, there's no like actor that's actually good that like knows this world maybe or like has an interest in this world like I do. And I just kind of had this like inner kind of like beyond confidence that like I was the person for it. Um, so yeah, I mean, and then like once I actually booked it, I feel like it was definitely interesting to like read through and like see all the like sex scenes I was gonna do and that sort of thing. Um, and even just like conversations with your agent where it's like they're like, going over like what nudity is gonna show and like even going scene by scene, and they're saying words like, bottoming, and like your agent is using the word bottoming and stuff like that. It's simulated, but like it's still have to talk about it because it's just like it's part of their job to make sure you're protected. Um, but yeah, I don't know. No, I think like it definitely like I think that like actors who shy away from anything overly sexual, um, it's like kind of a way of directing your career on a certain path. However, I think like in terms of like castability, I think you having it just like out of the way that like you're comfortable with that is sort of like a sigh of relief for anybody who wants to do anything in that realm, and they know you're not going to be like scared or shy if they do want to do a sex scene, you're not going to be like overly um precious about it. So I think if anything, I was just kind of like, I as a human don't have any reservations about this. So it would be
Mhm.
inauthentic for me to be like, oh, well, I don't want to do it, like whatever. Like I want to be treated respectfully, and I want, those scenes to be simulated and properly done and rehearsed and all that. But nudity itself, I don't really, and sex, there's no frontal, but I don't really care about people seeing me have sex on TV.
Yeah, I want to know more about that. My somebody, Tom Stevens, who's a Canadian actor, he is on
Moonshine.
Moonshine. He's done a bunch of shows. Yeah, Moonshine. So he was on the show, and he's always, at the time of recording, he was always shirtless and scantily clad. And I was like, what are you going to do if they want to see you naked? He's like, well, if it's in the script, like it'll happen. And then recently I was on one of my pop culture blogs, and it was like, Tom Stevens' butt in Moonshine. I was like, oh my God, he
Oh
did
yeah.
it. And I like called him, and he texted me. I was like explaining sort of what happens. And for him, he's been acting for a long time, no big deal, and he works on his body nonstop. So it was like a small scene. You see his ass, looked fantastic. But I do wonder about like the logistics of that. So you shed a little light on it right now. Is like your agent sort of walks you through. There's a bottoming scene, there's a simulated sex scene, and then I'm sure as an actor, you're like, oh God, like what is it going to be like? Can you sort of walk me through what happens the day on set? And also, like, this is another thing I wonder, if they want to show your butt, do they like want to see it first? Like, do you have, is that part of the audition process? Is like, hey, we know you can act, we know you can do this role. We also need to see a little bit naked. So can you like send us a
Yeah.
picture of your
I just
butt,
want to say
or how
side
does that
note.
happen?
Side note about Tom. I've never met him, but we've chatted a bit because we were both nominated for Leo Awards this year for Best Lead in a Series. Yeah, so that neither of us won
Oh
actually.
my
The other guy
God,
won,
cool.
but yeah, we were both nominated for that. So that was cool. And ironically, both Moonshine and Sugar High's film in Nova Scotia. So that's another funny parallel there. But I've never met
Oh
him.
my God.
Yeah,
I didn't know it filmed in Nova Scotia. It was a beautiful part of the country, hey?
it is. Yeah, I mean, Sugar. I think Moonshine films in I forget what it's called. It's like an hour outside of Halifax, Lunenburg. It's really beautiful over there. But Sugar Highs is really just Halifax. It's meant to take place in San Francisco, so Halifax kind of
Mm.
mimics like they have a lot of like streets with like blue, green, purple house, like just kind of the way it is in San Francisco.
Hmm.
Yeah,
I didn't know that.
yeah. I had never been before filming, but yeah, the filming of sex scenes, they I don't think they're allowed to ask if they can see your butt. I don't even know if they're allowed to like look at your top like torso, to be honest. I don't know if they're allowed to ask for that. I think they're not, but I guess they could and
Wow.
risk cancellation. But no, they didn't ask to see my butt. Um I would say interestingly enough to like answer the first question like prior, like I had more I have less like insecurity about like having sex on camera versus like, oh God, what does my body look like as I'm doing whatever it is I'm doing? Like that would
Mm.
be more what I'm worried about. More the kind of like superficial stuff. Um but uh but yeah, so basically you like I think it depends on the set, but for this one, you would rehearse the scene, you would talk about it, and you have to wear usually some sort of funny like intimacy pouch over your um, genitals. And those are awkward, and sometimes you're like, they're like falling off so much that you're like, do I even want to bother? But um,
Oh my God. I have
and like,
anxiety thinking about it.
yeah, like I don't know, I don't know, there are times where I'm like, it's very like awkward and technical. You're like swinging around, but you're like keeping your legs together like a slug, to like not have your balls show from behind. Um, and also like not have the intimacy pouch fall off, which it's like it's fallen off mid-scene and it feels almost like you've pooped out your like intimacy pouch or something. Like it's just like falling between your legs, this like little thing. Yeah, it's interesting. There's
So is an in
coming out and I have less I have lots of like shirtlessness and like scantily clad moments in season two, but a lot less graphic sex.
is an intimacy pouch like a jockstrap, but like invisible? That's what I'm imagining.
Um, uh, some of them. So some of them it's like a cock sock. And it's like a little thing that you just like zip up around your penis. Um, and then the other one is kind of like this thing that you like stick and it like kind of I guess does go up your uh around and up, but it's like meant to be skin colored, like whatever your skin tone is. So yeah, it's funny.
I hope your publicist isn't mad at all these questions I'm asking you immediately about being naked and having sex on set. I just couldn't help it. I'm so curious.
I think it's fine. Also, it's like this is like some sort of like almost in between season press, so
Yeah.
it's
They're not
probably
going to
just
be watching you like a hawk. I know when I interview people from Drag Race or Housewives, I was really surprised at how strict networks can be about interviews. Like I've had some. This is a peek behind the curtain for the listeners. Is sometimes publicists actually sit on the calls on the Zoom calls with their
yeah,
camera off to make sure that you don't go off topic, especially if you're interviewing somebody who is currently in season, but maybe it's unclear if they're going to be kicked off or not. I didn't know that. I was surprised at that.
yeah.
Yeah,
More so. Okay, so the way that at least in my experience that press has worked is like you hire them for a certain period. So I did hire NPR for that period. They were really good, and Morgan would sit in on interviews. Um,
nice.
which is interesting for me. Like I appreciate it from like a good businesswoman perspective and like doing their job and like, you know, spending time, which is spending money on you. However, like weirdly enough, even though I'm an actor, like growing up, I played tennis competitively and whatever sport or like thing I was doing, I never wanted my parents to watch me because I felt it would like F up my performance. So it's like there is like a slight element of just like another entity in the Zoom room that I'm kind of like, brother, you don't be
You have to
here, but
think about. Yeah, yeah,
yeah, I just feel like I would speak a little bit more candidly. But they were like, which is I guess not always a good thing, but I thought they were really
yeah.
really liked working with them.
I one of the things that I love about what's happening for you right now is when I was an assistant at a talent agency, like oh god, 2007 to 2012,
Yeah.
gay roles were definitely in shows, but they were few and far between, and there was like one gay role, one trans role, like very very minimal, and then. Obviously, pop culture and the entertainment industry has evolved, and now we have people like you who are able to star in a show about like sugar baby culture, and it's kind of like I don't know if it's the golden era of like queer content creators, queer artists. I don't think we'll know that for a couple more decades when we like look back and see
Yeah.
sort of what comes next. But it is really cool that you're able to like tell this story on TV. I feel like it has evolved quickly. I mean, you're a relatively young actor, and I'm sure you remember when there was no there was no queer people on TV, and now it's like there's a lot of queer stories. So do you feel that in this role, do you feel like you're kind of at a precipice, or you're like a part of forward momentum when it comes to queer stories that are being told?
I do think so. I think I'm sort of like finally meeting the moment. Like I think at the beginning, like my first agent that I was ever with was like really like high profile and really good, but she just like very much wanted me to play like the stereotypical kind of like teen jock. And that was hard for me, not just because I didn't really know how to act yet, but partly also because I like wasn't one in high school. I didn't know those people in high school. I was had no friends until I was out, and then once I was out, those people were like afraid of me. So it's like I didn't even really like have anything to pull from of like how that person behaved or anything. And then like there were occasional times I'd get gay auditions, but um yeah, it very much felt kind of like, putting a square into a circle or whatever for a long time, as Hilary Duff once said. Um,
To
but
quote the queen herself.
to quote, yeah, the best writer of all time. Um, but yeah, I don't know. And then I like went away it was interesting because I basically like I went and did school, as you know. And
Hmm.
I felt like while I was away at school, I noticed a difference and kind of a shift. And I didn't know if it was just like because I was in New York and New York was like a little bit more evolved, or if it was like a whole industry thing. Um, but yeah, it was like it's just cool to see it, and then it's cool to see like there's one actor in Vancouver that I know named Jason Sasaki, and he's only like 21 or 22, but he like really meets the moment because I feel like the other interesting thing is that like the openly queer actors that I know that are like upwards of 30 and look more like adults per se. Um,
Hmm.
a lot of them have made some progress in their career already by playing straight roles, and now they could play gay roles, but like they've sort of like missed the opportunity to like play a more effeminate or like ridiculous kind of role like what I'm doing, or like, and I'm not that much younger than them, but like Jason, for example, he's getting to play the like cool young queer um teen or early 20s kind of roles. And I think that's where it's kind of like the sweet spot to like get to be part of that movement forward. Yeah.
Oh God. I like when I tell you I watch fucking Troye Sivan, Kim Petras,
Mhm.
Euphoria, all of these shows, Sex Education, and I'm like, if I had been born 20 years later, I would be a huge star. Because I feel like, listen, I mean, you and I have known each other for a long time. Also, I want to say the fact that you know Tom, or that you were both nominated for a Leon Award. Congratulations, by the way. That's huge.
Thank you. It was my
Really,
first time.
really exciting.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. I want to hear what it was like going to the award show, but hearing you say that reminded me of, and this is something that I say on my show often, is like there's so much focus on American culture, American pop culture, like it is the epicenter of Hollywood and entertainment, and um, I always look to like the Club Kids, and then the American version of RuPaul's Drag Race and American Housewives, and then when you take kind of like the shift and you go to Canada and you look at the drag talent, the musicians, the DJs, the culture curators, and people like you and Tom who are on TV and telling these amazing stories, it is a tight knit community of like people who are making it, that are out there living their dreams. And it's interesting. Like, there's so many amazing Canadian artists like you who are doing the damn thing. And I, through doing this show, have realized that, because I think by default, we're constantly looking to America as like what's cool, what's happening. But we have amazing things happening here that are worth talking about and worth celebrating.
I agree. I will say though that like from like a representation perspective, particularly with queer representation, I started working with like the union queer committee here, and like I basically was just sort of like observing that like the US and Europe and even like Toronto, I think, we're doing really well at like hiring authentically queer actors for queer roles. And I was just noticing here that like it wasn't, there was some effort, but there wasn't, it didn't seem to be really happening that effectively. Um,
Hmm.
and so like a big argument of mine when I'm like when I wrote that letter and like when I talk to them is I'm just like when you watch like something from the US that's meant to have an LGBTQ actor in it, 9 times out of 10 or 10 times out of 10 these days, they are actually queer. Like when you watch, I've probably seen Fire Island, like every single actor in that
Yep.
movie is queer. Um, I think Glamorous too, like that's a Toronto one. Like it feels like a priority most places. So I've just been trying to like get Vancouver a little caught up because I think, yeah, we can look at ourselves too, but it is, and from that perspective, it is good to look at America or look at Europe,
Mm. This
how
is
they're
why it's
doing
good to get
it.
your insight.
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, Canada is historically like a little behind in so many ways.
it
I'm
is.
actually interviewing some casting directors coming up, so I'll be sure to like keep that in the back of my mind
Oh gosh.
when I talk to them.
Which ones?
Yeah, I'll be like, "This is what Adam Fox said,
Oh
and
God.
he wants to know why." Just kidding, I won't say
Well,
that,
it's
or
so
maybe I will.
interesting. Okay, one
Um,
kind of similarly related story. Um, when I was in my last semester of NYU, we did like this thing called industry nights on Mondays, and we would do a scene in front of either like a casting director, an agent, or a manager. And there was one kid who was trans and non-binary. And in the Q&A portion, like there's not really much you can do for yourself in general in a Q&A portion to like help yourself. But what they would do is they would raise their hand and say like, "Oh, are you looking to add any trans or non-binary actors to your roster?" And it was kind of it was really smart because they were asking in a way that like sounded pretty innocent, but at the same time, it's like flagging that they're trans and non-binary, which is a plus. And it's kind of putting the agent in a position where if they say no, they sound bad. And as a result, like they're likely to probably take on this kid, like regardless of how they feel about trans rights and all that. So what I've actually started doing was kind of taking a page from their book and like if I'm at like some sort of networking event or something, or things where there's like a panel and I can ask like a director a question or a casting director a question, I will be bold and sort of like ask like what their thoughts are on the state of like representation and what steps they take and like what they have found to be useful. I always like spin it in a nice way and I like kind of like thank them for what they've done so far. But and I mean it. I mean that genuinely. But it's sort of like flagging myself as queer and confident and down for the job. And because otherwise you're just like a headshot in a spreadsheet that they're looking through and they're just going based off of looks. So if they know that you're queer and they like your look and they see that you've done some stuff, then that helps.
Yeah, it's also like I'm trying to remember when I would see I do represent artists still, but now it's more
You
like
do?
drag queens and like
Oh,
yeah, I work with an agency that has a lot of reality TV talent and
no,
like
fun.
RuPaul and Michelle Visage and uh it's different in America because the agency is called Benedetti. And actually, we're changing the name. It's going to be the Warner Agency, I believe. So they are the biggest drag talent agency in North America or maybe the world. So they have obviously every superstar from RuPaul's Drag Race, but they also have like Kim Petras is on the roster and RuPaul is
Oh,
on the roster.
cool.
But in America, you don't need to have exclusivity. You're allowed to have multiple agents for
Hmm,
booking live shows.
hmm.
So when I say like these people are my roster, they're also on probably other people's rosters. I don't know who, but they don't have exclusivity. Um,
Hmm.
yeah, but it's different now. Like when you bring up, I was gonna say like in the past when I remember seeing breakdowns for actors, they come out and they'll say what ethnicity they want, like white, any ethnicity, black, Asian, whatever. There was never that I can remember they would ask for like gay actors. They would say the role is gay. This is a trans character, but they wouldn't say we need to see queer
Right.
actors. And I'm wondering because you brought up a good point. I don't think they're allowed to ask to see my body. Oh, but when I was a background agent, and they were doing butt doubles, they did ask to see the butts of the extras, not from me, another agent. So I think it depends. But I am curious now. I'm thinking, like, if a casting director wants to make sure that they are having that representation be authentic, you probably have to be careful about that, because you can't be like, I only want to see gay actors, because then it's discriminatory. I guess it's closing the door for other actors who aren't, even though we should get more of a chance because we're a smaller minority. But yeah, it's interesting that you say you want to put your hand up and let them know, because if they don't, you could get missed. And that's something that young queer, not young, but like people who are in the industry wanting to ensure that they're included in the conversation about representation, you have to be your own advocate.
Yeah, you definitely do. And every like person, every actor, every casting director, every agent has like a different approach to it. I notice on some breakdowns it will say, I can't remember what the mildest is. There's like sometimes it'll say like priority will be given to like, you
Ah.
know, performers from the LGBTQ plus community. They can also say like priorities will be given to like local hire. Like they can say stuff like that too, like local hires for tax reasons, which is less touchy. But they can say that. They can say we encourage the submission um, of LGBTQ performers. It might say like production is really passionate about finding, you know, authentic. So like it kind of it depends on the breakdown. I think one that comes to mind where it like I don't know if I should say, but like I remember specifically like I think it was like Virgin River or something. They like really wanted real. And when it and that's a nice thing. And when it comes from producers, that's when they really mean it. Because like I think what I've learned in this kind of like time working with UBCP is that you know it's a lot of it's tough for casting directors right now because it's like a lot of different people coming at them. So it's like they might care about authentic representation and they might want that, but if the producer doesn't care, then they can only do so much. They can't really ask. You can volunteer that information if you want. Like you can say like, "Hey, blah blah blah. I'm 6 feet. I live in Vancouver. I identify as queer, or I identify as whatever it is." Um, so you can volunteer that information if you think it's helpful to you.
One of my first auditions when I was acting in Vancouver was for like a jock role on the CW or something. And I remember reading the breakdown and being like, this is not going to happen for me.
Mm.
But I remember in acting school, they were like, whatever scene that you go into, you want to have an intention. You want to have a secret. You want to have something that is like driving you. And I was like, okay, the scene was with another, like a teammate, like on a football team or something. And I was like, what if I want to fuck him? What if that's my secret?
Oh,
And I
there you
called
go.
my agent. And I'm like, what do you think of this? And she was like, I mean, do whatever you need to do to get to that place. And I wore this tight pink shirt that said "Sluts Are Us." And I remember going into the room, and the casting director,
Yeah,
big casting director in Vancouver, was like, "Hello, okay," and he like worked the scene with me, and who knows if I did good or not. I mean, obviously didn't get cast, but back then, I mean, this is maybe 15, 20 years ago. It was
yeah,
risk. I mean,
that's
it
very
was not the
risky.
same. Like very risky. I mean, then I started doing pop music, so I was like, nobody's gonna hire me. And acting teachers did say that. They're like, Peter, you're not. I see what you're doing. You're like really pushing. Like I'm a star, but um, it doesn't fit into it realistically. It does not fit into the Canadian film and TV world.
Yeah,
Now maybe different, but yeah.
it's still. I mean, yeah, it's an interesting thing. Like I do think in general the industry being more diverse and I guess like celebrating individuality, it leaves more room for, of course, diversity and like queerness and all that, but also leaves room for somebody that like I don't know thinks they're a star or like whatever. You know what I mean? Just kind of like somebody who's like I'm
Hmm.
amazing. I mean, I think it's tough because I think like I remember I used to like when I first started taking acting classes. Not to be mean, but I remember like thinking that like actors were really like basic and had should say that out loud. But I remember just thinking like none of them like dressed very school, and I remember like thinking
Ooh.
like, well, this is weird because like celebrities are actors and they have good style and like have taste and edge and stuff. Um, and but I remember thinking like, okay, like I think it's because like, and those people that like they didn't have like bad style. They just like dressed very like simply or like plain, like just flattering. Um, and then like, yeah, I don't want to go on that tangent, but too much. But and I definitely and I know a lot of actors now that dress really well, and it tends to be the like people that dress well in acting tend to be the like more like cool people. Like the thing that I just worked
Mm.
in July, it had a lot of like I don't know, like I really liked everybody. Everybody was really funny and cool and interesting, and as a result, they also like dressed pretty well too. I think it's all connected, but I think that like my feelings about how people dressed spoke to like where the industry was at back then, which was very like you're a guy next door, you're a girl next door, you're a boy next door, girl or boy, straight world. Geared your goal is to be a leading man or woman. Not much like emphasis on being funny or a character actor or anything like that, or being crazy or quirky. And there's really a lot of like love for, that like kind of regular guy, like, oh, he's just like a nice regular guy. And it's like, it can be frustrating because you're like, okay, well, I'm not regular. Like, what about me? Like, fuck that guy.
Oh,
Um,
for sure. Oh my God.
and I do think now that like, you see interesting people that are actors. Like, I feel like the actors that I know now dress A to Z. They like are all different. They look more different. Even amongst straight white people, like there's diversity of just like style, type, body, interest, and even like I don't know, like we're hopefully getting to a place too where like even like straight roles can kind of be not as much your Hollywood typical male, just
Yeah,
yeah,
totally. I think social media has a big, I think that's a response to social media is like now it's not enough just to be a good actor. There has to be something else because if you're going to lead a show, especially at a big level, you're going to have to be a product. You're going to have to do shit on social media. People are going to be looking at you. You become so accessible. So if
yeah.
somebody fits the part and they're also a dynamic person, I think
They're having
I'm thinking as a producer, it would just be like, this is going to be so much more exciting from a project and from a publicity standpoint if this person is interesting. Then
yeah.
it, and I hate to bring her up in every damn episode, but Brittany was just a regular person, right? And then you see what happens when somebody is normal, become, I use the term normal very
Yeah.
loosely, becomes a huge superstar, and really behind it, there isn't anything really engaging. It's just like sort of a blank slate and a
Hmm.
lot of money and a lot of promotion to make somebody a superstar. Whereas now, social media means anybody can be famous at any time. And if you've got that thing, that je ne sais
Hmm.
quoi, and you are also on TV, then I think you have a better chance of becoming a superstar. Um, like when you're talking about seeing those people in acting classes, I know exactly what you're talking about. I lived in LA very briefly and I went to acting classes, and I remember being like, this is Hollywood and people are dressed so fucking boring. I was
Hmm.
in like a studded leather jacket, ripped jeans, bleach blonde hair that was so fried I couldn't even like fucking get it down. And I remember the casting directors were always like, oh, like they gravitated towards me because I was so unique. But again, at the time wasn't the right time for it. But you're right. If you can find a way to like put the inside of your spirit on the outside and show people who you are, whether or not that is like a crazy punk or like a super queer, it doesn't really matter. But what is
Hmm.
it about you that's different? And how can
Yeah.
you put that
And how
into
can
your
you
work?
market it and like make it? Yeah. And I think for me, it was sort of like, how can I bring, like, I think I'm like, I don't know, I've always been good at like making like random characters and stuff and just doing like a random voice or thing. But I was like, how do I bring that kind of like energy or like humor to like just a role where it's like somebody else's lines and it's not my idea? And like, I think that was sort of like a goal as well, was to kind of like find a way in. And I think that's like an ongoing goal to like kind of like bring as much of like I think like as you get further in it, you realize that like a lot of what you create or perform is a result of your inspirations, and a lot of the times the things that you book, it's like your perspective on the character and your influences of how you read that character are aligned with, whatever the director watched, or like whatever they've like, if you're playing somebody and they're a little bit like this actor or that actor or this singer or that whatever, and that resonates with them, it's almost like a unspoken thing that you probably saw the same things growing up or watched the same show that like is a bit of a reference to that character. So it's like kind of want
Mm.
to bring your own, influences, interests, um, whether that's like as dumb as like you hear a lot like the Real Housewives thing. I watch it too, so it's like even it's as dumb as like a line reminds me of something like Bethany Frankel would say, then it's like in my head it's going to be exciting because it's like, oh my god, that sounds like Bethany Frankel.
Bethany.
Yeah.
Bethany. We love Bethany.
Mhm.
I have this memory of you, and I don't know when it was. It was in our Gastown loft, and I was having a party and you were there and we were talking, and I
Yeah.
keep thinking about that as I'm watching you talk, and how cool it is to see your journey unfold,
Hmm.
and how I don't know if we talked about this back then, but the obsession I had with fame for so long, and like really wanting to understand it and be a part of it. I'm wondering if that was something you also had growing up. Like, did you look at pop culture, and when we were in the club scene together, was that something that you aspired to be? Like, were you motivated by fame, by being on TV?
Yeah, I don't know. It's like it's a little different for me because I think that like the household I grew up in is not that vibe. Like my parents are really cool, but they are like as far from, well, I shouldn't say that. My dad is a musician, but he's not like a musician that's like, I want to be famous. Like he just wants to be like a respected, good musician, which he is. His father was like a famous pianist, but again, it was like fame in like he's a very, high profile, great pianist that's like in the encyclopedia. It's not fame like
Mm,
tabloids or paparazzi or that kind of thing, right? Um, and then my mom is just like quite introverted and like eccentric and academic, but and artistic too. But yeah, they like I always say like if I had been my parent, I would have put me in acting um because of what I was doing as a kid, but like they're just the farthest thing from stage parents that I don't think it even crossed their minds. Um and so growing up, I don't did I just burp?
yes, you
Oh,
did.
I
I
did,
was
sorry.
like, girl, she's comfortable. That's
Uh,
good. We're just getting cozy here on the Superficial
oh,
Spirit. You can do whatever you
sorry.
want.
Oh god, I'm having a bubbly water. That's probably why. I like it was one of those things I didn't know if it actually out louder in my head. Oh god.
Peak chaos, and I'm here
Yeah.
for it. That's okay.
Oh god. Um. uh, but yeah. So.
You wanting to be famous, is that a thing? You're.
So yeah. So I
By the way,
think
you
like
post about your mom a lot on Instagram, and she
I
seems
do.
super cool. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Her
yeah.
review. I
She
asked
seems
her. She
cool.
saw the Barbie movie and asked her what she thought of it, and she said it was too loud and too much pink. And I was like, "You mean the movie theater was loud?" And she was like, "Yeah, we were way too close." And I was like, "That's not the movie. That's just like any movie theater. So your only real criticism is too much pink." Um, but yeah, she's funny. But yeah, no, I think like there probably was a part of me that wanted that. Like I used to watch America's Next Top Model, and I thought that was really cool. Um, but I wasn't really like very good looking growing up, and like kind of had a ugly duckling phase later in life. And so like entertainment industry just never really seemed like an option. I think that
Mm.
when I went to McGill, it was like at a point where I was like kind of coming into my look, and I know it's like problematic now, we don't say heroin chic, but like at the time I like really wanted to like lose weight and be heroin chic and all that.
Hmm.
So I did do all that, and I definitely embodied that, term. and I wanted to model, and that was the first thing I did. But yeah, I don't know. I think I like took a left turn towards the entertainment industry when I left McGill, but I wasn't necessarily sure where it would go. Um, I do think I think I would be dishonest if I said I didn't want to be famous, but I don't know. It's like it's even interesting with social media because even like not having that many followers, you still get an idea of like what it's like to give
Mhm.
people things that they can have an opinion on you about. And it's like even I feel like I've made my Instagram a lot more like less eccentric. And it's sort of like I partly did that just because I don't know, as I started doing more acting stuff and whatever, I just kind of like didn't want people misunderstanding things. I didn't like when I would post like a dance video, I would notice that there was like more shares than there were likes, and I was like, are people like in the community just like talking shit about me behind my back, being like, oh my God, he's crazy or whatever. So I was just kind of like, eh.
Damn.
So like I
Oh
feel like
God.
fame on a larger level, sometimes I like the idea of it, but I also think it would be, as we all know, like challenging to navigate the like realities of that. And like, yeah. But on one hand, though, I think like in general, I'm somebody that like likes saying hi to people on the street and likes like connecting with humans. So I think that part of it would be fine. It would just be the like the judgment at times that could be hard.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I remember your dancing videos. They were awesome. You posted them
I
all the
mean, they're
time. You
still
were
on
like,
there.
yeah, you're like fearless. Yeah, you're like Britney does the same thing. She dances. It doesn't really matter.
You know what? Mine are a little bit
It's
better than
inter
hers, but they might not be.
yeah. But you kind of wear the same outfits, let's be honest.
Yeah, she's definitely an inspiration. At for the old
Uh,
like old Britney. I mean,
Old
I
Britney for
was
sure,
listening to
yeah.
a podcast about Britney now, and um, whoever your guest was, Roger, what was his name?
The last one, Derek,
A guy
the
named
most
Derek.
recent one. Yeah, yeah.
It didn't say his name
He
on the
is,
bio.
yeah. So he often comes on the show. He's a friend from way back in the day. He's a model. He's an influencer.
What's his
He,
last name?
yeah, Derek Brown.
Derek Brown. Okay.
I'll send you his Instagram profile. You can see it.
Okay.
He's got big
But yeah, like
muscles.
you guys were saying, like it just looks quite um like cheap these days. Or I think that's what you guys said.
I know. Yeah, I
Yeah.
did say that, and I like it hurts me to say that about Britney. Like I have "Oops, I Did It Again" tattooed on my damn body. Like I love her,
Really, wow.
but at some point you have to have, as like stan culture where people are like die hard loyalists for the celebrities they love. At some point you need to like be able to disengaging, and that's how I feel about Britney. I'm just kind of like I don't want to talk about her anymore, but I probably will, and I just want to sort of like move on because I think ultimately that's what she wants. Anyway, I don't want to go down a Britney tangent because I will
Yeah.
start and I won't stop. And we're here
Yeah.
to talk about you. Um, okay, so fame was like something that was maybe on your mind, but definitely not at the forefront. And now that you're on a TV show and season two is coming out, like you've finished shooting it.
Yeah, and I like yeah, and I luckily like did a few things this year too that will come out, so good things to come. Yeah.
Nice. So how do you feel at this point in your career? Because a lot of people who are listening will be like, "Damn, that sounds so exciting. Like I wish I was on a show or I hope one day I'm on a show." And you're at this place where, you got the show, you're working on other projects, you've been nominated for a Leo award. It's going good. Do you
Hmm.
feel like you're in that place that's really exciting? Do you feel like how does it feel? That's what I want to know. How does it feel to be
Yeah,
in
it's
your own show
interesting.
and
I
having all this stuff
mean,
happen?
yeah, I think like it's been interesting because like there have been times where I feel like really good, or I'm like, or like while I'm filming, I'll be like, wow, this is so cool. Like, because I've done like background work in the past. And like I remember like when I first ever did BG work, I think because again, like having my life be like so far from the entertainment industry growing up, And then to do something like BG, it felt like the distance from like where I was standing as a BG to being the actor felt like this kind of like finding a treasure in the ocean. Like it felt really far away.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I had a moment on the last thing I worked on where I was just, and it was, I can't talk about it, I don't think, because that one is network, but like it was definitely the highest budget thing that I've worked on in a more major, larger role. Not
Mm-hmm.
a lead, but like larger role. And I had a moment where I was just like looking around at like the whole set and the cameras and the BG and everything, and I was just like, oh wow, like I'm on this side now. Um, and I'm gonna
So
do what
cool.
I'm gonna do now, whether it's good or not. But yeah, I think the like I don't know, it's like then you have moments where like you feel kind of overwhelmed or insecure or like you question if you're good or um I think it's kind of case by case and day to day. Um I think it is still like it is weird sometimes just like that I am an actor. Like I think for a long time I was somebody that just like really didn't want to like in the Barbie movie, there's like they talk about identity a lot. You've seen it, I imagine.
I have not seen it.
You
How
haven't seen
embarrassing is
it?
that?
Oh
I
wow,
know.
that's crazy.
I haven't seen it, bitch. I know, I know, I know. It's on my list.
Um, but like one of the themes is sort of like, you know, you're more than your name, you're more than your outfit, you're more than your like identity or whatever you are. Like we're all kind of like multifaceted and we're not just one thing. So I feel like I used to like really not want to be thought of as like this or that or model or actor or whatever. But it is interesting because like as you start doing it more, like you really are one and that is who you are and you're kind of sometimes like, oh wow, I guess I'm an actor. Or like I'm
Yeah,
good
you
at this.
gotta own it.
Yeah, exactly. And I do for the most part. But to bring up Housewives again, I started in the last couple of years taking on like Ramona Singer. I know she's problematic, but Ramona Singer's kind of like confidence about things and the way she talks about herself. And it
Yeah.
feels really good to just be like, yeah, like I'm really good. Or like, and when people will be like, if you meet new people and they're like, are you a good actor? And you're like, yeah, I'm really good. Like rather than being like, oh, I
Well,
don't
I'm
know.
on my own TV show, bitch, so
You know,
I'm not that
exactly. It's
bad.
like it's better to just be unapologetically confident, which is what I usually go for.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
Do you think that being on the show now has made it easier for you to book other work or like get in the room for bigger roles?
I think so. I mean, it's an interesting show because it's like it's not a huge network, but it is a network that a lot of people, especially in our community, watch. So a lot of
Yeah.
people have seen it, and you know, like I've traveled and I've met people who have seen it, which is funny.
Nice.
Yeah, in other countries and stuff too. Um,
Oh, cool. Like they recognized you?
yeah, I mean, it happened shortly after it came out in Montreal. And then it happened in Vancouver a couple times. It happened in Mexico with somebody from the
Oh my
US,
God. She's
and it happened
international.
in London, but it was an American guy that I like befriended, and he was like, "Wait a second, are you on that show?" And I was like, "Yeah," and he's like, "Oh my God, my friend and I watched that show." Um,
I
so
love
it's
that.
cool.
That's so
Yeah,
cool.
yeah, it is cool. But like on the same hand, like it's not like I'm on some like mega like I don't know if you watch the show Glamorous. Like my friend Graham got his first like major role on that, and like that is like you know, I don't know how many million people will see that show, but if you're like top 10 on Netflix, a lot of people see it. Whereas this is a little different.
Oh, yeah.
However, like yeah, it's pretty awesome to get like a lead role, especially with not a huge amount of experience. And
Hmm.
it's also interesting because like I think initially when I was auditioning and stuff, I didn't care about role size or anything. But after having done a lead on a show and feeling that, like I kind of am clear that like that's what I prefer. I feel like it's cool being in a lead role because like when you're an actor doing a role, you're serving a role, you're playing a role, you're serving a purpose for the story. When you're a lead, it's almost more like being a business partner in a way. Like you're really a big part of it. Like you
Cool.
are, you know, you're leading. Like you are in like it's as if you're in like a management position in a way, which is kind of cool. And you really matter, and it like really matters each day to day, and you like kind of get to step into this sort of like boss mode, which is kind of nice, and lead by example and be nice to people. And like, it's, I don't know, it's like, it's a nice feeling. So, but yeah, I think, yeah, it definitely opens doors. I think having it just on my resume was one thing, but having the show come out and have the footage from it
Yep.
helped a lot.
Yep.
Um,
Totally.
and I'm hoping season two brings even more
I'm
opportunities.
sure it will. I
Yeah.
wanted to ask you about OutTV because I've done stuff with OutTV. They're a great net well, I was banned from OutTV for a while. I don't know if I still am because they thought I was doing drugs on set. Oh my God, it was so stupid. They invited me to do this psychic reading show connected with my dad who had died when I was 9. I was crying.
Yeah.
Somebody told him I was doing cocaine on set, which I wasn't.
Were you doing cocaine
And
in the
the
picture?
no, bitch.
I was reference.
But it was very Lindsay Lohan. I mean, that's why you have to be careful about what you manifest because I really wanted to be like that trashy Hollywood star. And then I did get that reputation. But going like thinking about Out TV and when I was thinking getting ready to talk to you, I wanted to ask you this and wasn't quite sure how is like I work with a lot of drag queens who do music. And one thing that they're always saying is like, I want to make music that isn't drag queen music. I want to do like real pop music. It's not just drag queen music. Priyanka says that all the time. Priyanka's got a great, she's got great songs, but it's this constant awareness that the product you put out is going to be put into this super niche, super small category. Music
Mm,
from drag queens. And I feel that way sometimes about the shows that are on OutTV is like sometimes they can get put in a category that's like, oh, like it's a show, but it's on OutTV. But if you watch it, it's great content and there's great artists on there. Do you feel that way? You kind of just touched on it where you're like, I know I'm a lead in a TV show, but it is out TV. It's not like the CW. It's not like
right.
HBO. But is that something that comes up a lot, or that you have to
Yeah, I mean,
contemplate?
it's interesting because like it's less of like I think it's a great show. I think it's amazing writing. The director of it, um, Tom Fitzgerald, he basically is like he's like a pretty like successful. He's got a great career as a director and writer. He's done major things like a lot of like critically acclaimed movies and stuff. And he's been sort of like the one person on Out TV who kind of like changed the landscape for Out TV of having actual like series and dramatic series as well. Like he had
Wow.
um like a show called Sex and Violence, which was like their highest rated fictional show. So he's been sort of like a golden boy for Out TV, and like they're doing more stuff like that. So more or less like he kind of like I think it's nice for him working with them. I could be wrong, but I think it's kind of like he can kind of do whatever he wants and they'll want it and like it. And Sugar Highs was a show he wanted to make for a really long time. Um, but so I think the show is great. I think the writing's great. I think the network is great too. But yeah, I think that like, you know, it's like going to like a restaurant and getting something that's not the obvious main thing. It's like the obvious main thing on Out TV is like drag race, untucked kind of drag content. Whereas this is more like, you know, it's a real scripted TV show. Um, and there are other ones on there too. But I mean, I think it's like one of the favorite things that like the founders or the heads of Out TV have right now. And I've
Nice.
been impressed by like by non by non-queer people like willing to like I don't know, like I've been taking singing lessons, and the couple who run this studio, um they're actors too, and like I saw the wife last week. I go to the husband for singing, but and she was just like, "Oh my God, congrats, da, 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 da. That's it's so fun." And I was like, "Oh, like you actually watched it?" And she was like, "Yeah, I watched it. It was really fun." And I was like, "Oh wow!" Like, and like I've had like
Nice.
you know like people in acting that like are very straight that like went out of their way, like men, straight men, like that went out of their way to like watch the whole show, and like really liked it. And I thought that was cool that like they were willing to go to this like whole other streaming that they don't have, which is pretty easy. It's just like you can do the free trial or an add-on or whatever, and it's inexpensive too, just as a side note. Um, for anyone who doesn't have it, it's like very easy to access. Um,
Yeah,
but yeah, like I was impressed with all the people that were happy to watch it and really enjoyed it outside the community as well. And I do think it's like, yeah, it's not as big as a Netflix thing, but it's like considering a lot of what actors do in Vancouver or in Canada, it's like it's not bad. It's like I would say like Netflix and like I don't know, HBO of course would be like kind of like top tier. And then there's stuff like made for Tubi or Shudder or like these other like streaming
yeah.
platforms. Side note, I'd be happy to do any of the above. But I think that like
Oh,
OutTV,
for sure.
I think OutTV ranks more in the middle. Like it's better than the kind of streaming services that are kind of more up and coming, because it is an established network and it's a cable network too and international. But yeah, it's not as big as Netflix. But yeah, at the end of the day, it's a lead role, and a lot of people won't ever get to do that. So to get to do that early on is pretty awesome.
For sure. And staying power, like it says a lot. Jan Arden told me this. Persistence is bigger than talent. And if you have been around for as long as OutTV, that means something. They
Yeah.
have staying power. They've been resilient. They were fucking up and running and pumping out content before it was cool to be queer. And
Hmm.
that it's a testament to what they're doing and what they're bringing to the game. And Canada is a different market. So, yes, it does matter. It is great. And I'm super proud of you. And I'm so glad we finally got to chat. I know we
Yeah.
didn't like get into the down and nitty gritty of like the role and the show, but I am all like, when people come on, I really want to talk about their journey, how it feels to be on TV. What did you
Mm.
want from the experience? And I think you did a really good job of like, talking about like your life as an actor, but also, the things that you have to consider when you're queer and you're coming into the industry. I do want to hear before we wrap up about the Leo Awards, honey, because that's a glamorous night out in the city. What was it like to go?
So I was really excited to go. However, I was away in Manitoba filming all of July. So
Oh, which
it
is
kind
even more glamorous. You were
yeah, I know.
filming out of town and couldn't go to the award show. So there you
Yeah,
go.
my friend who's like
That's
a
good.
doctor was like, "Isn't that cool that like my childhood friend Becca was like, isn't that cool that like you're so successful, you're missing an award show?" And I'm like, "Girl, it's not.
Oh my
Let's
God, we
not get ahead
love
of
it.
ourselves. Let's not get ahead of ourselves." Um, but yeah, I was willing to because I'd never been nominated for something like that before. I was willing to fly back from Manitoba on my own dime just for that weekend, but I had to film it was a Sunday to Thursday filming schedule, and I had to film the day of. I wrote a speech that I was ready to give, or that I gave.
You can give it to us right now.
I mean, it's in my notes. I think I just kind of like addressed the kind of hurdles I had at the beginning and what it means to like do a role that's so unapologetically queer. Um, and I know we didn't get into the nitty gritty of like the role in the show and stuff, but I think like the the role is really empowering as a queer person, to play and to inhabit, just because it's like it's a very effeminate role and a very like assertive and aggressive role. So it's like cool to like it's like that's kind of different. It's like we don't always have like we have like the queer kind of bitchy one is like more like the kind of like side character making like little quips here and there rather than the one being like we're doing this and we're doing this and like get on your shit. Like he's very aggressive. Not very aggressive, but wait, season
Bossy
2
bottom.
he's very much a bossy bottom. He's very that. And season 2 he's like even more aggressive. So I'm excited to see that. But
Ooh, I can't
yeah, I think
wait.
season
Well,
1 is
listen,
pardon.
I was just gonna say, like, I feel like you're on the up and up. Your career is going places, and you
I hope
will
so.
definitely have to come back every single time you book anything, even if it's a bubblegum commercial.
Well, I hope I get a bubblegum commercial.
I'll
Shout
talk to
out
the
to
casting
bubblegum.
directors when I interview them.
Which casting directors
Is
do you
there
interview?
anything?
Or you're
Well, the
not?
ones that have booked me on shows, I don't care. Well, I'll tell you offline, just in case they end
Okay.
up not. I don't want to get people excited and then they don't. But thank you so much. Is there anything else you want to add? Any advice you want to give for the people listening who maybe want to be on TV? one day or like be an actor?
Yeah, I think like what you just said, like persistence is really important. I think that like another thing I observed over time is just kind of like I have a friend, I won't say who, but like I won't even, yeah. And they kind of like will get jealous when somebody like that's like newer to the industry books a role they wanted or gets a call back for something they wanted. And I always say to them, it's like, yeah, that this person might have like a fleeting moment, like because of their look, and maybe they like have a vibe that matches the moment. But that kind of actor doesn't have endurance. Like that's an actor, not an artist. Um,
Ooh,
and like
like that.
yeah, and like the people that have endurance are like people that like have their own ideas, have their own opinions, stick with it. The people that stick with it are the ones who really want it, and will really like grab the bull by the horns once they get those opportunities. Um, and I think it's also just like it's like waiting it out. It's like people, especially as you get older, like people quit as you get older.
Yes.
So if you stick it out, you'll
Yes.
have less competition. I don't think I'm definitely not
That
at that age yet, but like, it's like in general, it's like I'm glad to have booked stuff in recent years, and I know that like knock on wood, but like it'll probably only get easier. But I shouldn't say that out loud, but it probably will only get easier. So it's like, yeah, stick it out. If you really care, it'll work out. Um, and yeah, like, be your own person, have your own opinions, have your own ideas, your own perspective. Um, and they always say to like have fun. And I think it like takes a long time for you to like figure out how to actually have fun while you're acting, but like it's quite nice both for like your mental health and your, I don't know, performance. And one last thing, um, that an actor friend of mine that I worked with recently, who's only 19 but has been acting since she was like 7. I was just saying how like I was just like saying that like I wished I felt I kind of got my footing fairly quickly on the project we were working on, but like I was saying I wished I had that confidence on day one, and she was like, it's all mindset. So next time, day one of a show, just have that like I'm here, take up space mindset. So
You know who said the same thing that you just said about the older you get, people quit is George Clooney. Whenever George
oh,
Clooney gets asked about like how he made it, he's like, honestly, you just stick with it long enough and you're the fucking last person in the audition room and they give you the
yeah,
role. So great advice.
exactly.
Th Thanks so much for being here, baby. You'll have to come back soon.
Definitely, and sorry for burping. Also, I'm sorry for
Uh,
insulting actors' style.
they're the mob. I'm gonna give them your personal address. The bad
Okay,
dressers of America, of Canada, are gonna be
yeah,
coming to your
for
house,
Vancouver.
and I'll be leading the charge.
I'm
Okay,
like
I'll talk
friends
to you
with half
soon.
of the people. No, I'm just kidding. Okay.